200 hours deep beneath the Pacific surface, 50 miles southeast of Midway Atoll. Absolute blackness envelops the hull of the lead attack submarine as it glides through the crushing pressure of the deep trench. The silence is profound, broken only by the faint hum of cooling pumps circulating water through the nuclear reactor. The vessel moves like a predatory shadow, ghosting past the cold thermal layers that hide it from surface detection. Inside the command center, the air is cool and recycled, bathed in the soft red glow of tactical displays. Crew members speak in hushed whispers, their faces illuminated by the green sweep of passive sonar screens. The smell of ozone and filtered air fills the tight compartment. The sonar operator leans forward, pressing his headphones tighter against his ears. A faint, rhythmic churning disturbs the water miles above their heads. The digital waterfall display spikes with jagged lines of noise. The operator signals the officer of the deck. The hand gesture is sharp. Contact. The captain moves to the center console. He studies the plot. Above them, the ocean surface teems with hostile steel. The acoustic signatures confirm a heavy blockade. Massive propellers chop the water, creating a chaotic wall of sound. The captain signals the dive officer. The submarine angles upward, rising from the abyss to periscope depth. Hydraulic planes shift. Water rushes over the anechoic tiles of the steel skin. Two other attack submarines flank the leader, forming a silent trident in the dark water. They creep through the blind spot of the enemy sonar net, using the ambient noise of the waves to mask their approach. The optical mast slides up silently, breaking the surface for a split second. A camera rotates 360 degrees. The feed transmits to the main monitors. The horizon is cluttered with silhouettes. Enemy destroyers patrol in a tight circle around the captured island. A heavy cruiser sits at the center, its radar dishes spinning aggressively. Supply ships offload heavy crates onto landing craft near the reef. The sheer tonnage of the occupation force is staggering. Searchlights sweep the black water, looking for periscopes. The captain lowers the mast instantly. Suddenly, a high-pitched screech tears through the water. Active sonar. The sound wave slams into the submarine's hull like a physical blow. Dust falls from the overhead pipes. The crew grips their consoles. On the surface, an enemy frigate turns sharply. It accelerates. Its propellers churn the water into a frenzy. The submarine dives. Emergency vents open. Compressed air hisses. The vessel drops like a stone toward the safety of the thermal layer. The enemy frigate passes directly overhead. The thrum of its engines vibrates the deck plates of the submarine. A depth charge splashes into the water. The explosion detonates deep off the port bow. A shockwave hammers the submarine, shaking the hull frame violently. Light bulbs burst in the passageway. Sailors stumble, catching themselves on handrails. The hull groans under the stress. The captain holds the railing, his face impassive. He orders a hard turn to starboard to mask their signature in the frigate's wake. The submarine drifts into the shadow of a deep underwater canyon. The frigate circles above, blindly dropping more ordnance. The explosions grow distant. They have slipped the noose. The captain checks the coordinates against the encrypted mission order. The entire wolf pack is now positioned inside the enemy defensive perimeter. He looks at the weapons officer. The firing solution is locked. Target designators paint the engine rooms of the ships above. The weapons officer flips the safety covers on the launch triggers. Tube doors slide open. Water floods the launch chambers. The firing board turns solid green. The enemy fleet sails unknowingly above a loaded trap. The ocean floor waits for the wreckage. 2:30 hours, submerged position, 3 miles off Sand Island. The command center remains bathed in crimson light. The captain watches the digital timer count down to 0. He gives a sharp nod. The weapons officer depresses the master firing key. A shudder runs through the steel hull. Compressed air bellows hiss violently. Vertical launch tubes slam open. Massive cylindrical canisters eject from the submarine's spine. They rush upward through the dark water, trailing bubbles. They breach the surface with a wet roar. Protective caps blow off. Solid rocket boosters ignite instantly. The ocean surface erupts in blinding white light. Thick pillars of smoke replace the sea mist. One by one, 30 cruise missiles scream into the night sky, their engines howling as they accelerate toward the island. On the shoreline, enemy sentries freeze. They drop their cigarettes. They look up at the streaks of fire tearing through the clouds. The air raid sirens begin to wail, but the sound is drowned out by the incoming ordnance. The missiles level out, skimming just feet above the waves to evade tracking. They slam into the coast. The first missile impacts the primary search radar tower. The structure disintegrates. Steel beams shear like twigs. The explosion hurls the radar dish hundreds of feet into the lagoon. A second missile strikes the fuel depot. The tank ruptures. Thousands of gallons of aviation fuel ignite in a split second. A fireball consumes the tarmac. Soldiers near the blast zone are lifted off their feet and thrown into the concrete blast walls. Chaos grips the enemy cruiser stationed offshore. The bridge crew shouts coordinates. The captain screams for a hard turn. The close-in weapon systems spin up, their barrels rotating in a blur. Tracers spray into the sky, hunting the subsonic missiles. They clip one missile. It tumbles into the water and detonates, sending a geyser of spray over the deck. But there are too many targets. On the island, the destruction intensifies. A missile dives directly into a hardened surface-to-air missile battery. The warhead punches through the reinforced roof. The bunker implodes. Secondary explosions chain react as the stored missiles inside cook off. Concrete slab size of cars fly through the air. Dust and black smoke choke the barracks. An enemy officer stumbles out of the command bunker. He coughs violently, wiping soot from his eyes. He grabs his radio handset. He screams orders to the artillery crews. He demands counterfire. But the island is blind. The radar is gone. The submarine Wolfpack dives deep immediately after the launch. They run silent, moving into the thermal shadows to evade the inevitable depth charge retaliation. On the surface, the night is no longer dark. The burning fuel depot casts a flickering orange glow across the water, illuminating the wreckage of the island's defenses. The door is kicked open. ZO 400 hours, flight deck of a U.S. aircraft carrier, 200 miles east of Midway. The ocean is pitch black, indistinguishable from the ink-dark sky. Steam rises from the catapult tracks, swirling in the humid tropical air. The smell of burnt kerosene and salt spray dominates the deck. Yellow-shirted flight deck crews wave illuminated wands, guiding massive shapes into position. The roar of jet engines is deafening, a physical pressure that vibrates the chest cavities of every sailor on deck. A U.S. strike fighter lowers its launch bar. The pilot signals readiness. The shooter drops to one knee and points forward. The catapult fires. The jet screams down the short runway, accelerating from 0 to 160 knots in 2 seconds. The afterburners ignite, spitting twin tongues of blue flame into the darkness. The aircraft leaps off the bow, sinking slightly before clawing for altitude. Within minutes, 2 full squadrons are airborne. They form a deadly wedge formation, climbing rapidly to 30,000 feet. High above the cloud layer, the air is thin and cold. The formation leader checks his radar display. The screen is cluttered with red hostile tags. The enemy carrier group has launched its own defensive screen. A wall of enemy fighters races to meet them at supersonic speeds. The closing rate is over 2,000 miles per hour. The radar plane orbiting far behind transmits a warning code. The enemy fighters fire first. Long-range air-to-air missiles streak across the horizon, leaving thick white trails that glow in the moonlight. The U.S. flight leader barks an order. The formation splits violently. Jets bank hard left and right, dumping chaff and flares. The countermeasures bloom like fireworks, confusing the incoming radar seekers. One U.S. jet is too slow. A missile slams into its starboard engine. The explosion shreds the tail section. The aircraft spins uncontrollably, engulfed in a ball of fire. The canopy blows off. The ejection seat rockets the pilot into the freezing air just seconds before the fuselage disintegrates. The remaining U.S. fighters engage. The pilots thumb their weapon release buttons. Medium-range missiles drop from the wings, their motors igniting with a blinding flash. They tear through the sky, hunting the enemy heat signatures. 4 enemy jets vanish in rapid succession, turned into falling debris fields of burning aluminum. The distance closes. The fight merges. It becomes a visual brawl. A U.S. strike fighter pulls a high G-turn, the vapor cones forming over its wings as it pushes the laws of physics. The pilot struggles against the crushing gravity, his G-suit inflating to keep blood in his brain. An enemy fighter flashes past his canopy. So close the U.S. pilot can see the rivets on the enemy's fuselage. The enemy banks hard, trying to get a firing solution. The U.S. pilot reverses his turn, dumping speed. The enemy overshoots. The U.S. pilot squeezes the trigger. The 20mm cannon roars. Tracers sow a line of destruction across the enemy jet's wing route. The wing shears off completely. The enemy plane snaps into a violent roll and plummets toward the ocean below. Another enemy fighter locks onto the flight leader. The radar warning receiver screams. The leader dives, spiraling toward the ocean deck. He skims 500 feet above the waves. The enemy pursues, hungry for the kill. The leader pulls up sharply at the last second. The enemy pilot, fixated on the target, reacts too late. His jet slams into the water at Mach 1. The ocean swallows the aircraft instantly in a massive white splash. The sky is a chaotic tapestry of smoke trails, falling wreckage, and burning parachutes. The surviving enemy aircraft, low on fuel and munitions, break off and turn back toward their fleet. The U.S. squadron regroups. Their formation is thinner, but they control the air. They check their fuel gauges. They turn their nose cones toward the island. The path for the surface fleet is open. 5:30 hours, north of Midway Atoll. The gray light of dawn bleeds across the horizon, revealing a rough, churning sea. The air is thick with the acrid haze of the earlier missile strikes. Huge swells crash over the bows of the U.S. destroyer squadron as they cut through the water at flank speed. The ships plow through the waves, burying their noses in green water before rising again, shedding waterfalls of foam. On the bridge wings, lookouts scan the mist with high-powered binoculars. The silence is heavy, filled only by the roar of gas turbine engines and the crash of the ocean. A sudden electronic shriek breaks the calm. The radar warning receivers light up red. The enemy fleet has emerged from the fog bank, 5 miles out, point-blank range for modern naval warfare. The leading U.S. destroyer shudders violently. The forward vertical launch system hatches fly open. Smoke and fire erupt from the deck as anti-ship missiles roar out of their cells. They pitch over immediately, skimming the wave tops toward the enemy formation. Across the water, the enemy cruiser responds. Its main gun turrets swivel. Muzzle flashes light up the dim morning. Seconds later, water geysers erupt around the U.S. ships. Steel fragments pepper the superstructure of the lead destroyer. A direct hit slams into the helicopter hangar. The blast door crumples inward like tinfoil. Black smoke pours from the stern. The U.S. captain shouts orders. The helm spins the wheel. The destroyer heels over sharply, presenting a smaller target profile. The 5-inch deck gun pivots and fires. The rhythmic thump, thump, thump of the cannon echoes across the water. Shell casings clatter onto the deck. The rounds strike the enemy frigate. The bridge windows shatter. A shell penetrates the hull near the waterline. White steam hisses as seawater floods the boiler room. The enemy ship lists heavily to port, but the enemy fights back. A supersonic missile streaks from the enemy line. It bypasses the U.S. countermeasures. It slams into the side of a U.S. cruiser. The impact is catastrophic. The explosion rips a 20-foot hole in the steel plating. The shockwave throws sailors across the Combat Information Center. Monitors spark and explode. Fire suppression systems trigger, flooding the passageways with chemical foam. The battle degrades into a brawl. Ships trade fire at visible range. Tracers from heavy machine guns arc across the water, stitching holes in radars and comms arrays. A U.S. destroyer fires a torpedo spread. The wire-guided weapons snake through the water. The sonar ping accelerates. The enemy flagship attempts to turn. It is too slow. 2 torpedoes strike the midships. The detonations lift the massive vessel out of the water. The keel snaps with a sound louder than the explosion itself. The ship breaks in two. The bow section tilts upward, pointing at the sky before sliding beneath the waves. Oil spreads across the surface, calming the chop. The surviving enemy vessels turn away, scattering into the smoke screens. The U.S. line holds. Damage control teams rush across the slick decks, dragging fire hoses. The path to the beach is clear. 6:15 hours, 10 miles off the coast of Sand Island. The sun climbs higher, illuminating the drifting smoke of the naval battle. The sea heaves with a greasy, gray swell, littered with floating debris from the destroyed enemy frigates. The massive U.S. amphibious assault ships loom like steel cliffs against the horizon. Their stern gates slowly lower into the churning water, revealing the dark, cavernous well decks inside. The roar of engines echoes from within the belly of the ships, a deafening mechanical thunder. Diesel fumes turn the air inside the hold a hazy blue. The first landing craft air cushion, LCAC, inflates its massive black rubber skirt. The distinct scream of its gas turbines pierces the air. The giant hovercraft slides backward into the ocean, throwing up a blinding wall of saltwater spray. It rotates on a cushion of air. The pilot pushes the throttle forward. The craft surges, skimming the wave tops at 50 knots, carrying a main battle tank strapped to its deck. Behind the hovercraft, lines of amphibious assault vehicles plunge off the ramps. They hit the water with heavy splashes, bobbing momentarily before their water jets engage. They form a long, jagged line of steel beetles churning toward the hostile shore. On the island, the enemy defenders spot the white wakes cutting through the blue water. A surviving artillery battery opens fire. High explosive shells whistle through the air. A geyser of water erupts 50 yards from the lead hovercraft. The shockwave rattles the pilot's teeth. He fights the yoke, correcting the drift. Another shell lands closer. Shrapnel tears through the rubber skirt of a flanking craft. Air hisses out. The vessel sags to the right, dragging its corner in the sea, but the pilot maintains momentum. A mortar round scores a direct hit on an amphibious carrier in the second wave. The explosion rips the top hatch off. Smoke pours from the vehicle. It loses power and begins to drift, taking on water. Marines scramble out of the top, diving into the open ocean as the steel coffin sinks beneath them. The assault commander, watching from the bridge of the flagship, grips the railing. He barks into the comms net. He orders the formation to widen the gap. He calls for immediate smoke screening. The lead hovercraft hits the reef line. It does not slow down. It flies over the sharp coral, the rubber skirt protecting the hull. The engine pitch changes to a deep growl. The white sand of the beach rushes to meet them. The ramp chains rattle. The invasion has arrived. 6:45 hours, Red Beach, northern edge of Sand Island. The pristine white sand is churned into a gray sludge of oil and coral dust. Shredded palm fronds litter the dunes, snapped by the naval bombardment. The air hangs heavy with the thick stench of cordite and salt spray. The roar of the incoming hovercraft drowns out the rhythmic crashing of the waves. The massive vessels drift sideways, their skirts deflating as they settle onto the hard-packed sand. The front ramps slam down into the surf with a wet, metallic clang. The silence breaks instantly. A wall of lead erupts from the tree line. Enemy heavy machine guns open up from concealed log bunkers. The sound is a continuous tearing roar. Sand geysers spray into the air, stitching lines of death across the beach. Marines sprint down the wet ramps. The first man in the stack is hit mid-stride. A heavy round punches through his ceramic chest plate. The impact throws him backward into the surf, the water turning pink around him. The squad behind him dives into the wet sand, scrambling for the cover of a shallow dune. Bullets snap overhead like angry hornets. A battle tank rolls off the deck of the second hovercraft. Its tracks chew into the beach. The turret rotates with a mechanical whine. A rocket-propelled grenade streaks from the bunker complex. It strikes the tank's reactive armor blocks. The explosion is deafening, sending a shower of sparks and black smoke billowing into the air. The tank shudders but keeps moving. Its coaxial machine gun spits fire. The tank commander acquires the target. The main gun recoils violently. A high explosive round smashes into the enemy pillbox. Concrete dust and timber blast outward. The machine gun fire from that sector stops abruptly. "Keep moving! Get off the beach!" a sergeant screams, grabbing a Marine by the drag handle of his vest. He hauls the soldier forward. Mortar rounds begin to fall. The ground shakes violently. Dirt and hot shrapnel rain down on the pinned unit. A medic drags a wounded gunner behind the steel treads of the tank, ripping open a medical pouch with slick, bloody hands. He packs gauze into a jagged leg wound while the battle rages feet away. The second wave of amphibious vehicles hits the shore. Their back ramps drop. More infantry pour out, adding their rifles to the return fire. They bound forward, moving from crater to crater. The beachhead is established, but the sand is stained red. 0730 hours, 200 yards inland from the beachhead. The advance stops cold against a concrete seawall. The humid air boils with the heat of the rising sun and the intense friction of combat. Dust hangs suspended in the windless pockets between the dunes. Marines press their bodies flat against the earth, seeking shelter in shallow craters and behind fallen coconut palms. The noise is overwhelming. A heavy enemy machine gun nest, dug deep into a coral ridge, dominates the killing field. It hammers the U.S. position relentlessly. Bullets chew away the top of the concrete wall, sending razor-sharp fragments spraying over the huddled squad. A young radio man flinches as a round cracks inches above his helmet. He hands the handset to the forward air controller. The controller wipes sweat and grit from his eyes. He crawls up the berm, exposing only his optics. He lasers the dark slit of the enemy bunker. The distance readout flashes, 100 meters, danger close. He screams the coordinates into the radio, his voice cracking over the roar of gunfire. He demands immediate suppression. The radio crackles back. "Time on target, 10 seconds. Keep your heads down." A low, rhythmic thumping vibration builds in the air. It grows rapidly into a mechanical roar. 2 attack helicopters pop up suddenly from behind the tree line. They hover like angry wasps, nose down. The pilots acquire the target. Smoke trails erupt from the stub wings. Hydras and guided missiles streak across the short gap. They slam into the face of the enemy ridge. The explosions follow one another in a rapid staccato beat. Rock and timber fly into the air. The heavy machine gun falls silent. But the enemy infantry in the trenches keeps firing. The lead helicopter pivots. Its 30mm chain gun spins up. A long tongue of flame spits from the chin turret. The sound is a terrifying, ripping buzz like canvas tearing. High explosive rounds plow the earth in a straight line, walking directly through the enemy trench system. Bodies and sandbags disintegrate under the impact. "Inbound heavy!" the controller yells, burying his face in the dirt. A single fighter jet screams overhead at subsonic speed. It releases a 2,000-pound guided bomb. The weapon arcs down, silent and heavy. It strikes the center of the bunker complex. The ground heaves. A massive shockwave ripples through the sand, lifting the Marines off the ground. A mushroom cloud of black smoke and pulverized coral rises 500 feet into the air. The concussion bursts eardrums. Debris rains down for 10 seconds. Chunks of concrete, twisted rebar, and shredded vegetation. The dust begins to settle. The enemy ridge is gone. It is now a smoking crater. The squad leader stands up, brushing dirt from his rifle. He hand signals forward. The Marines rise from the ground and surge over the wall, sprinting toward the smoking ruin. 0900 hours, Henderson Field, center of Sand Island. The tropical sun beats down on the cracked black asphalt, creating shimmering waves of heat haze. The skeletons of destroyed civilian aircraft sit on the apron, burned down to their charred metal frames. The massive main hangar looms at the end of the runway, its sheet metal roof riddled with shrapnel holes like Swiss cheese. Inside the cavernous structure, shadows stretch long and dark. Dust motes dance in the beams of light, piercing the gloom. The air is stagnant, smelling of hydraulic fluid and rotting vegetation. A squad of Marines stacks up against the exterior wall of the hangar. Their boots crunch softly on broken glass. The point man signals. He pushes the side door. It swings open with a rusty screech that cuts through the silence. The team floods into the hangar. Weapon lights slice through the darkness. They sweep left and right. "Contact high," a Marine screams. Muzzle flashes sparkle from the upper maintenance catwalks. The sound of automatic fire is deafening inside the metal echo chamber. Bullets spark off the concrete floor and ping wildly off steel beams. The Marines dive for cover behind heavy tool chests and the landing gear of a disassembled transport plane. One Marine takes a round to the shoulder. The impact spins him around. He drops his rifle and falls hard, clutching the wound as blood seeps between his fingers. His teammate grabs his vest and drags him behind a forklift. The squad leader peeks out. He spots the muzzle flash in the rafters. He taps the shoulder of the grenadier. He points upward. The grenadier raises his weapon. The launcher makes a hollow thump. The 40mm round arcs through the air. It strikes the steel grating of the catwalk. The explosion blooms orange in the dark rafters. The metal walkway shears off its supports. It swings down violently. Two enemy soldiers plummet 20 feet to the concrete floor. They hit with a sickening crunch and do not move. Debris rains down on the aircraft below. Moving! The Marines surge forward. They sweep the ground floor, firing short, controlled bursts into the offices lining the walls. Wood splinters, glass shatters. An enemy soldier kicks open a door, firing blindly. 3 Marines return fire instantly. The soldier jerks violently as multiple rounds strike his chest. He collapses backward into the room. Simultaneously, a second team breaches the control tower. The stairwell is narrow and steep. The point man rounds the corner. He comes face to face with a defender. The Marine fires from the hip. The muzzle blast lights up the cramped stairwell. The enemy falls, sliding down the steps, leaving a smear of red on the wall. The team kicks in the door to the flight deck. The glass windows are already blown out. The wind howls through the room. They sweep the corners. Clear. The squad leader keys his radio. The hangar is secure. The airfield is under U.S. control. Outside, a bulldozer pushes a wrecked plane off the runway. The strip is being cleared for arrivals. 10:30 hours, northern perimeter of the captured airfield. The sun is now high and punishing, baking the coral rock. Marines crouch in shallow, hastily dug foxholes, wiping sweat and grime from their eyes. The air is still, heavy with the metallic taste of adrenaline and settling dust. Canteens are passed down the line. A subtle vibration begins to tremble through the ground. Loose pebbles dance on the hood of a parked jeep. The vibration grows into a low, menacing rumble. A flock of seabirds suddenly takes flight from the northern tree line, screeching in panic. The jungle wall explodes outward. 3 enemy battle tanks smash through the dense vegetation, snapping palm trees like toothpicks. Their diesel engines roar, spewing black exhaust. Behind them, a wave of desperate enemy infantry surges forward, firing from the hip. The lead tank rotates its turret. The main gun fires. The muzzle blast flattens the grass for 50 yards. A high-explosive shell impacts a sandbagged machine gun nest. The position disintegrates. Sandbags, weapon parts, and bodies are hurled into the air in a cloud of red mist and dust. "Contact front! Armor!" a lieutenant screams, diving into a crater. The U.S. line erupts. Heavy machine guns open up, the barrels glowing red-hot. Tracers bounce harmlessly off the sloped front armor of the tanks, but tear through the exposed enemy infantry. Enemy soldiers drop in the open ground, their bodies jerking as bullets strike home. But the tanks keep coming, their tracks grinding the earth. A Marine heavy weapons team sprints to a rocky berm. The gunner shoulders a portable anti-tank missile launcher. He steadies his breathing. He locks onto the lead tank. He squeezes the trigger. The missile ejects with a sharp whoosh, followed by the ignition of the flight motor. It streaks across the open tarmac. It strikes the joint between the turret and the hull. The shaped charge detonates. A jet of molten copper punches through the steel. The tank shudders violently. The ammunition carousel inside ignites. A catastrophic explosion rips the turret completely off the chassis, tossing the 10-ton steel cap into the air. It crashes down upside down, crushing 2 enemy soldiers. A pillar of fire erupts from the open hull, turning the interior into a furnace. The second tank slews to the right, trying to evade. A Marine with a shoulder-fired rocket pops up from a drainage ditch. He fires at close range. The warhead slams into the tank's drive sprocket. The steel track shatters. The chain whips loose, thrashing against the side of the vehicle. The tank spins uncontrollably, digging a deep furrow in the asphalt before grinding to a halt. The surviving enemy infantry wavers. They see their armor burning. They stop firing. They turn and run back toward the jungle. The third tank pops smoke canisters, reversing blindly into the green wall to escape the kill zone. The firing dies down. The only sound is the crackle of flames from the destroyed tanks, and the moans of the wounded on the tarmac. The counterattack is broken. 1200 hours, the northern peninsula of Sand Island. The sun hangs directly overhead, a blinding white disk in a cloudless sky. The heat is oppressive, radiating off the coral rock and asphalt in shimmering waves that distort the air. The smell of burning rubber and sulfur is thick enough to taste. A tense quiet has fallen over the front line, broken only by the crackle of burning vegetation. U.S. Marines crouch behind a low stone wall, their uniforms stained dark with sweat and grime. They check their magazines, they look back toward the road. The ground begins to shake. It is not a subtle vibration. It is a rhythmic, heavy thumping that rattles the teeth. The sound of high-pitched turbine engines grows into a scream. 4 U.S. battle tanks round the curve of the access road. They move with terrifying speed for their size, their 60-ton bulk crushing the debris scattered across the tarmac. The lead tank slews sideways, its tracks tearing deep gouges into the road surface as it aligns its front armor toward the enemy. The remaining enemy defenders are dug into a fortified command bunker built into the side of a coastal cliff. They open fire. Machine gun bullets spark harmlessly off the sloped, depleted uranium armor of the approaching tanks. It sounds like hail hitting a tin roof. The tanks do not slow down. The lead tank commander spots the muzzle flashes in the bunker slit. The massive turret rotates. The main gun stabilizes. A blast of overpressure kicks up a cloud of dust around the tank. The shell strikes the bunker wall. Concrete vaporizes. A hole the size of a truck door is punched through the reinforced steel and rock. The explosion inside blows the heavy blast doors off their hinges, sending them cartwheeling down the cliff face into the sea. "Push forward! Use the armor!" a captain yells, waving his arm. The infantry rises. They stack up behind the steel beasts, using the tanks as mobile shields. The combined force advances. The tanks roll over the outer perimeter fence, flattening the barbed wire and sandbag walls under their tracks. A desperate enemy soldier leans out of a spider hole with a rocket launcher. He aims at the rear engine deck of the passing tank. A Marine marksman spots him. 2 shots ring out. The enemy soldier crumples, the rocket firing wildly into the sky, corkscrewing until it detonates harmlessly over the ocean. The second tank fires a canister round into a cluster of enemy infantry attempting to retreat. The shotgun-like blast shreds the vegetation and the soldiers hiding within it. The resistance breaks. The terrifying firepower of the heavy armor is too much. Enemy soldiers throw down their weapons. They raise their hands, stepping out from behind shattered palm trees and ruined foxholes. The U.S. tanks grind to a halt just 50 yards from the ruins of the command post. Their barrels remain leveled at the dark opening of the bunker. The engines idle with a menacing whine. Marines fan out, moving quickly to zip-tie prisoners and secure the perimeter. The enemy is backed against the sheer drop of the cliffs. There is nowhere left to run. The heavy thud of boots surrounds the final stronghold. 1400 hours, Central Plaza, Sand Island. The guns fall silent. The sudden absence of noise is jarring, replaced only by the crackle of cooling metal and the distant rhythmic lap of the ocean against the reef. The island is a ruin. Smoke columns rise vertically into the blue sky from a dozen distinct fires, marking the graveyards of tanks and bunkers. The palm trees are sheared in half, their trunks splintered like matchsticks. The white sand is churned into a moonscape of craters and black ash. A long column of enemy prisoners shuffles down the center of the cratered runway. They are stripped of their webbing and helmets. Their uniforms are torn and stained with soot. They walk with heads down, hands clasped behind their necks. U.S. Marines flank the line, weapons at the low ready, eyes scanning the defeated men for any sign of resistance. There is none. The fight has been crushed out of them. They are corralled into a makeshift holding area surrounded by razor wire. They sit on the hot asphalt, baking under the relentless Pacific sun. Near the hangars, a triage station pulses with urgent activity. Corpsmen kneel in pools of blood, working frantically to stabilize the casualties. A transport helicopter sits with its rotors spinning slowly, waiting to evacuate the critical cases. A medic shouts an order. 4 Marines lift a stretcher. A young soldier lies on it, his leg heavily bandaged, his face pale. They rush him toward the waiting aircraft. The wash from the rotors whips dust into their faces. The helicopter lifts off, banking sharply toward the hospital ship waiting offshore. In the center of the plaza, a Marine corporal approaches the flagpole. The metal pole is scarred by shrapnel and slightly bent, but it stands. He pulls a folded flag from his cargo pocket. He shakes it out. The red, white, and blue fabric is bright against the gray ruin of the island. He attaches the clips. He pulls the lanyard. The flag rises. It climbs past the roofline of the battered command center. It reaches the top. The stiff trade winds catch the material instantly. The star-spangled banner snaps taut, cracking like a whip. Offshore, the gray shapes of the U.S. fleet dominate the horizon. Destroyers and cruisers sit in a ring of steel, their radars turning, watching the sky. The island is secured. The strategic rock in the middle of the ocean is reclaimed.